So let's talk about it seems, reading Bilyeu, one of the big moments, and this is what's so fascinating is when I started reading your book, it feels so counter instinctual. And you really have to find, and this was in particular, you were in northern Tanzania, the Hadza people, and can you so metabolism for a lot of people, and about keeping fit, and about taking weight off. We kind of, this whole idea of burning fuel, but you watch the Hadza people, and you started to go, well, hang on a minute, this isn't quite working out.
Yeah, it's a hilarious story actually. We spent a lot, so I should say, this is collaborative work with my good friends and colleagues, Dave Reichland and Brian Wood. Brian Wood has spent his career with the Hadza community. So the Hadza community, they're one of the last hunting and gathering populations on the planet. They live in the savannas of northern Tanzania. They have no electricity, no plumbing, no vehicles, no guns. It's every day they wake up and they go and get wild plant foods like tubers and berries, or they hunt for wild game. The men make their own bow and arrow and hunt for zebra and giraffe and antelope, or they go get wild honey, which is a big part of their diet. So these people are still holding on to their old traditions. They're as modern as you and me biologically, of course. We're all modern humans, but they've held on to these old traditions that make them this really important point of comparison. So we wanted to go and measure their total energy expenditures. And we were sure, of course, like everybody would be, that they're going to be really high, that the calories are going to be really high because they get somewhere between 5 and 10 times more activity every day than you and me. We've measured this, right? So they get more, a Hadza man or woman gets more activity in a day, physical activity in a day, than you or me get in a week. That's that's kind of the punchline. And so nobody ever measured calories. So we went and did it. And I can tell you all the grant applications, right? Because none of this stuff is free or even cheap. So you have to write these grant applications to fund your work. And happily we were funded. But they all said all the grant applications were initially, look, we know that they're really high expenditures, but we just have to measure how much, right? Because obviously that's what we're going to find, but we don't know how big the difference is. And so let's go look. And so we go and do the work, living with a Hadza for, months in and around their camps, and just completely fun and cool and life-changing. But we get home and we have all these urine samples, right? We've got these boxes of Hadza urine samples with isotopes in them to go measure the expenditures. And we send them all off to one of the best labs in the world to do this doubly labeled water stuff. The data come back and they were the same daily energy expenditures as people in the US, the UK, Europe, industrialized countries everywhere. It didn't matter that they are 5 times more active than you and me. The total calories burned per day was indistinguishable. It was completely mind-blowing.
And is this the first time this is? Because I think it is mind-blowing. I really think, the other day I was saying, because many people, I've obviously put on weight in the kind of, the pandemic, and I need to lose weight before I start going on tour again. And you ask advice on social media, which is a great place, by the way. It's filled with a lot of interesting minds. And it's very strange ones too. But a lot of people say, you just got to do more exercise, and you got, it turns out, from what you're saying, these are separate stories. As you've said many times as well around the book, this does not mean you can now just sit in a chair and, exercise remains important for many things. But I would imagine many people watching this would just think, well, hang on a minute, activity burns calories. Surely the more active I must need, a car or whatever, we think you need to put more in to do more. So when did the suspicions, when did we first start seeing that this is not the way things are? Is it this work?
Yeah, this is, I think this was a big piece of it. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of kind of paradigm shifts in science. I'm not sure if this has become that yet or not, but it's these kind of big changes in the way we think about things. You have the big study that gets a lot of attention, and the Hadza study did, which was fun to kind of talk about science and talk about these ideas that, we weren't going to work on obesity when we went to do this work. We wanted to just measure metabolisms. And here we were having conversations about obesity and exercise versus diet and all these things. I think that Hadza study really was a big change in the way that people think about stuff. But like anything else, once you have this observation that changes people's minds or begins to, you start looking into the history here and you go, oh, actually in that study, I see this. I see this kind of confirming piece of evidence. Oh, in that study, I see this too. And so people had done studies with physically active groups, and it sometimes would show, they hadn't always compared to industrial groups, but when they did, often they'd show that it actually wasn't that big of a difference. Wait a second, nobody had done it in hunter-gatherers before, but in physically active groups, and they would say, well, yeah, but ignore that. But let's focus on something else, right? In the study. And we've known for a long time that you can't outrun a bad diet. We've known for a long time that exercise is actually, not a great tool by itself for weight loss. So I think this is one of these studies where it puts it on the map for people. It changes some minds, and it starts a whole lot of good science. But it's, to claim that it's the first thing ever to show this, I don't think that's quite right, because actually you begin to see the pieces earlier.
So when you were first getting these results, I mean, at what point did you have that moment of, because this obviously, to actually then present this to other people, you must think, well, again, even as a scientist, there's still that instinct inside that goes, this just feels so counterinstinctual. So I imagine you had points of battling with the results and saying, looking at all of those different things, what might we have done wrong? Did you find yourself going through a lot of different kind of journeys of working out why this result might be?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you get the surprising result, usually it means you fucked up. And so, we checked everything we can check, and we kept on going back to the Bill Wong at Baylor, who did the analysis, and it is like a world leader in this technique. And we said, Bill, are you sure the data look good? He goes, yeah, these are really solid. And we had a big enough sample that we knew it wasn't kind of a statistical fluke. And then we actually had a different way to measure the energy expenditure. We realized we had a way to estimate it from heart rates, because one of the things that we did with the people in the study, we asked them to wear like a jogging heart rate monitor while they were doing the doubly labeled water thing. And so we actually had a parallel measure. It's not quite as good as doubly labeled water, but it gives you an estimate of expenditure that way. And those gave us the same numbers. So it wasn't a technique thing. It wasn't the method doesn't work in this population or something like this. Both completely independent methods were giving us the same answers. And so we went ahead and we published, and, we kind of made the claim, look, this looks like it doesn't matter what your lifestyle is. You burn the same number of calories no matter what. And people kind of pushed back on that, as you can imagine. But we've done it in other populations since. We've looked at this in the work that my lab does with non-human primates. We've shown that if you measure the energy expenditures of monkeys in a zoo or monkeys in the wild, it's the same expenditure, same daily expenditure for both groups. You can do this experimentally with mice in a lab and get them to exercise more. You see this again and again and again. This is not just a one-off.
And you also say, one of the things is that this is what we are in a zoo, for us, for a lot of us who have these kind of, sedentary lifestyles, actually you can see the comparison between the difference between chimpanzees in the wild and chimpanzees who are in zoos.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's exactly right. So the zoos that we've built ourselves are making us unhealthy, right? Obesity is a problem. Heart disease is a problem. Heart disease in the middle of a year where we've had a global infectious disease pandemic that has tragically killed millions of people. It remains true that this past 12 months, the number one killer globally will be heart disease. And, and you add that to diabetes, add that to stroke, add that to the other lifestyle diseases. And as upset as we are and should be and worried about COVID, yes, but actually deadlier are the zoos that we've built ourselves and all the ways that they're making us sick. And so this is a real issue. And, I guess, big surprise, if you asked your pet to design your home for you and your lifestyle, right, it would involve a lot more treats for the pet, right? And so we are the only animal that on the earth that's ever designed its own zoo. And so not surprisingly, it's full of delicious food, and we've made things easy to get to. We don't have to exercise too much. And so, that's absolutely right, that we have to kind of try to figure out how to engineer our worlds differently, because the zoos we built for ourselves right now are not working out.
Does that, I mean, I presume it does. It troubles you, that sense, studying evolution and evolutionary anthropology, which is that the speed of change that we experience is something which, in terms of our brain adapting to it, however much as we know, we like to imagine that we're in charge of ourselves, but the usness of us is pretty much a veneer most of the time, I think, anyway. And so we're always battling with, sugar was rare. Oh, you're lucky to find the special fruit, and now you can go and get a shake and you can stick Oreos in it and all that, and it tastes delicious. And your old brain is going, quick, take the advantage. Milkshakes may never be available again until the next drive-through and the next one. What do you see as the ways of us trying to tackle our innate urges?
Yeah. That is the fundamental question. If we can solve this one, we're going to save a lot of lives, and we're going to make our own lives healthier for longer. So it's a hard one to do, obviously, but so ultra processed foods like the Oreos and the shakes and the prepackaged meals and the sugary beverages and the snacks and everything with a advertising campaign and a long list of ingredients, that makes up the bulk of the supermarket. Those account for well over half the calories eaten by the typical person in the UK. They make up over half the calories eaten in the US. Globally, they are increasing in how many, even sort of middle and low income countries are becoming more and more common. And all these obesity related diseases are tracking right along with them. So look, if you want to tackle obesity, you got to fix diet. And how do you fix diet? You get rid of, somehow, you limit all these ultra processed foods. And, look, I don't want to live in a world where I can't have a donut, man. So how do you do it in a way that's not draconian, right? I mean, you could imagine, if you were a despot, you could sort of just outlaw donuts. God, how horrible and stupid would that be? But we got to somehow figure out how to do it better, right? Maybe price in the health costs into them. I don't know. I'm not an economist, but could you tax it? Could you make it harder to get at? Could you, I don't know. One thing you can do for sure is not bring it home. If you want to fix it for yourself in your own life, if it's not in your cupboard, it's not in your fridge, you're not going to eat it. And so if you could keep those things to be treats that you do sometimes and not daily things that you do all the time, maybe that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that short-termism, even that as a species that is, renowned for its delayed gratification, we also have that strange short-termism with, true of diet and also of, climate change and all of these things, which we're in a real battle with our brains at the moment, aren't we? It's going to be, we'll win.
And this is really fun. All the obesity-related genes, people have found hundreds of genes associated with your likelihood of being obese. They're almost without exception, active in the brain, right? So obesity isn't your fat cells acting strangely or your liver cells acting strangely or your pancreas cells acting strangely. It's your brain cells not responding very well to your environment. So it's a struggle with our brains. And, I wish I could be a bit more optimistic about, I think willpower is out the window. There's no way you're going to fix this with willpower. It's just not fair, but your brain always wins.
Yeah, my brain I had a real cookie brain today. Procrastination. I don't know if you find. I can imagine that when you were writing this book, because this is one of the great times where everyone procrastinates, is the cookie jar never looks more delicious or more necessary when finding different ways of procrastinating to avoid actually finishing doing that 3,000 words of that day.
Yeah, I mean, or the extra cup of coffee or whatever it is, the vice for sure. Or for that matter, like reorganizing your bookshelves or cleaning the bathroom or almost anything is better than writing. Writing's terrible, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that interests me, which is, I remember talking to the author Jonathan Coe when I wrote my first book, and I said, I'm just finding it a nightmare. He said, yeah, I remember writing my first book. He said it was just absolutely agonizing. And then it just gets worse. You go, what? And he's someone who's written great novels, all these novels. You go, but it must get easier. I mean, that's the thing, that when you do go from being out in the field to then, so you had a battle writing this. Is in your head, is there a fully formed thing that you just want to be able to kind of take out and go, this is all the information I wish to deliver you? That bit of it also because the book is very well written, I thought, and very approachable for anyone, and but at the same time never kind of ignoring the science and that process as well of taking something which comes from an area of specialism to then also write it in a way that is popular. Was that a tough thing to do at times? Are there things that you did feel you had to sacrifice in the narrative to make sure it was approachable for everyone?
No, I mean, so when it wasn't this book, but I was pitching a magazine story to an editor at Scientific American, who also happened to be a good friend of mine, who I'd spent some summers in the field doing archaeology with, Kate Wong, wonderful person, great editor. And we were at a meeting, and she said, "Look, you've been working on some interesting stuff, and do you think you'd like to write a piece for the magazine for Scientific American?" I thought, oh, maybe I would. I enjoy conversations like this. I love to get a chance to talk science in a kind of casual, less stuffy format like this. I love this. And so I said, yeah, maybe I would. And so we were at the bar, as one is after a conference in the evenings. And, I started talking about this stuff, and she said, "Can you write like that? Can you write like you talk?" And I thought, yeah, why not? Right? It's just sort of a matter of imagining, talking about it, and then writing it down. And I think when you do that, so that's my process. Everybody has their own process, I'm sure. That's my process is, would I say it like this to my, to a non-specialist, right? Or even for that matter, to a specialist? Is this how I would talk? And if it's not how I would talk, or to explain things clearly, then I shouldn't write it like that, Anyway, so that was really helpful. And that little piece of insight, you never know sort of what is going to stick with you. That's always stuck with me. And I try to write like I would talk about it. And so if you can do that, if you get into a groove like that, I find it's fun. I don't know if you have that same experience. When you really do feel like you're just sort of writing down your thoughts in a fluid way, that can be really fun.
Yeah, because I love writing. I hate editing. And I think every editor hates me as well. It's the what do you mean it's twice as long as it should be? I wrote an extra 100,000 words. There was a pandemic. There was nothing else to do. Right. I'm interested as well in knowing what are those, because one thing you've always stressed in the interviews that I've seen and the piece you've done, this is not a diet book. It's very important for people to know that, but it is a book about diet, which I think is in many ways far more important than the list of recipes, etc. And what have been the early reactions that you've had from people about the book?
It's been, all over the map. I should say people have been really supportive mostly and love the book. And that's always fantastic to hear. The people here's who I've managed to piss off. I've managed to piss off people who really want exercise to fix obesity. Even though it's not just my work. Lots of work show that doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way. But people are upset with that. It has really pissed off people who think that there are magical diet ingredients that are either magically good or magically bad. So some people would say that carbohydrate and sugar is magically bad, and if you have any of it, you're doomed for obesity and type 2 diabetes. And conversely, if you have a diet that's all fat and protein, that it magically makes you thinner and healthier, and you can go keto, bro, and you can, people love that. And if you say, well, it's true that those diets can work, and they work for some people, but they work because if you only eat protein and fat, you will get full very quickly, and you don't overeat your calories. And it really is just about not eating too many calories. It's just one nice trick that some people like for avoiding overconsumption of calories is to cut carbs. Oh, they hate that. They absolutely hate that, because the magical story is so appealing. And so, all these sort of food taboos and food cults and food tribalism, a cult with a small c, of course, not actual real cults, but, the sort of beliefs about what food can do. People hate that too, because if you tell them it kind of comes down to calories, guys. Oh, they hate that. But on the other hand, I've had a number of doctors and people in public health reach out and say, this has been really helpful for us to think about energy this way. And thank you, because basically, kind of putting diet and exercise in the correct spaces and to assign them the correct jobs about how with how your body works, that's actually really helpful for thinking about a sustainable long-term way to be at a healthy weight and keep a healthy lifestyle. So that's been really satisfying, is to hear from doctors that are using this in their practice.